What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Isaiah, and welcome to the final round. And today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different other than my breakdowns. It's still a breakdown, but it's for a fight, as you see that on screen, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van. The fight has not been confirmed yet. It has not been signed or booked to any date yet. It's most likely going to happen 3/23 in December if all things go properly. But I'm just going to give an early prediction on this fight, who I think is going to win, break down each fighter, and give my thoughts. So we got the champion, right? We got Alexandre Pantoja, the cannibal. And I'll be honest, when he won the title off of Brandon Moreno, at first I was not the biggest fan of him because I was a Brandon Moreno fan, as a lot of people were. But when he gave his post-fight speech, that's when I instantly like, damn, this guy really worked for it, and he really has worked for everything he has right now. This man has been in the UFC since, let's see here, since 2016 when he joined the Ultimate Fighter. So almost a decade in the UFC. He has had 35 pro fights, and this man has never been finished once. And that is fucking wild because if anyone remembers, he fought Figgy at 125, and if anyone remembers, Figgy literally had to cut an arm and leg to make weight each time. Battered this dude on feet for like 3 rounds, and he couldn't finish. But other than that, his only other loss in the last 5 years is to Askar Askarov, who is no longer in the UFC. And he has ran through, as we see on the screen, the when I made this video, the current, as we see here, he has ran through quite a bit of guys in the top of the division. He's ran through Brandon Moreno 3 times, Brandon Roval twice, Kai Kara France twice, Neil Kopp, Anat Perez, Steve Erceg, and Kai Asakura both all once. And you look at some of the guys like Tim Elliott. I'm sorry, he's never gonna get up to that title shot at his stage. Tagir probably will fight Pantoja at some point. Ramazan Tamirov probably at some point. Bruno Silva probably not. But Amir Albazi maybe, but he's at a weird point in his career. Um, Fight cancellations, injuries keeping him off from fighting. So he's not at the greatest point in his career right now. But and there's also Asu Amabayev, who is kind of trying to get to the top, getting wins against the lower ranked guys, but once he fights a higher ranked guy, he hasn't done so well. So it's kind of at that stalemate position when a lot of the top guys will beat a lot of the lower guys. So it's hard to get any new contenders. And we've seen that in Pantoja's career. When he beat Brandon Moreno to get the title, absolute war. Absolute war. Split decision. He scraped it by, razor edge. You see in this photo right down here, that's Pantoja, versus Moreno, and this doesn't really highlight it well, but both men are bloody and beaten. And when he gave that post-fight speech, I was like, "Hey, Dad, you proud of me, Dad?" That tugs on the heartstrings a little bit, because that means something. But since then, I've become a fan of him. He fought Brandon Royval in his first defense. Um, wasn't the most exciting fight. It was a rematch where Pantoja submitted Royval via rear naked choke in the second round, but it was a clear decision for Pantoja. Royval couldn't do much. He has some moments, but overall, Pantoja's durability and just pace and pressure, where he likes to move forward, just got to Royval. In the fifth round, he did hurt Royval really bad. He had him on chicken legs, but he ultimately couldn't get it, finish. But it looked good. And then fought Steve Erceg, where a lot of people thought Steve Erceg won the fight, but Pantoja won that fight because Steve Erceg in the last round decided to shoot a takedown on this guy and cost him the fight. So that was that. And then after that, after the Steve Erceg fight, it's like he flipped a switch. He became a different fighter because I'm I'm not gonna try and get into mythical fighter type shit because I love to do that with Jake and he gets sick of it. But anytime a lot of times a fighter shaves their head bald, they flip a switch. You saw it with Volkanovski once he shaved his bald head for the Ortega fight. He was a totally different fighter from his previous fights, and you saw it with Pantoja because his fights were close. And then when he fought Kaiar Sakura, which I will admit, lower ranked guy, took him out in 2 rounds, submitted him, put him to sleep. Um, and then against Kaikara France, same thing. Got a hold of him, got him to the ground, got the choke, got it done. But I will say this about Pantoja. I do think he is very good and he's very worthy of being in the top five of the pound for pound because of what he's been able to do inside the octagon. But I've got notes here. So here's my thing about Pantoja. He will beat a lot of guys, and his upcoming match, which hasn't been confirmed, against Josh Van, it's definitely gonna happen. They face off in the cage. But here's my thing with Pantoja. And you look at his early career in the UFC, he fought a lot of more well-rounded type of fighters. And he did have some, struggles in those fights, and he did lose a bit. But lately in his career, he's fought more kind of while I won't want to label them all as this, but sort of one-dimensional fighters, like Kai Asakura and Kai Kara France, both are one-dimensional type fighters. Brandon Royval, kinda, not really. But against those one-dimensional fighters, you see that kind of switch. He is a totally different type of fighter. He takes them out of their element, which is the striking, gets them to the ground, makes them uncomfortable, and drowns them with pressure. And his style is that he pressures his opponent. He just moves forward no matter what you hit him with, and it makes sense. It gives him his nickname, the Cannibal, because he just eats these shots. And you, the fact that he took shots and blows from Figgy and didn't get knocked out, that says a whole lot of things. Because Figgy's power at this weight was unreal. But I think But regardless of that, let's move on to Joshua Van. Joshua Van, definitely. How old is Pantoja? Pantoja is 35, I believe. 35 years old. Joshua Van, 23 years old. And in Pantoja's post-fight interview at the post-fight press conference, he said, "At 23 years old, I was washing dishes, working in a restaurant, doing all this. At 23-year-old Joshua Van is going to be fighting for a world title, and he deserves it at this point because 1 year ago he suffered a bad KO loss to Charles Johnson, where he was winning the majority of the fight, and in the third round got caught with a nasty uppercut and just dropped him. And Charles Johnson does not get the respect he deserves. But Charles Johnson is the type of guy that will push you to your limit, and if you're not ready, he's gonna take you out. Charles Johnson is that type of guy. So he took Joshua Van out. And after that, Joshua Van's hype kind of diminished. People weren't that high on him, but since then he has had 5 different fights, right? In the span of a year, he has had 6 fights. But he has had 6 fights in the span of a year. All right, that is wild. Lost to Charles Johnson, and after that, got a bounce back decision win against Edgar Chairez on at the Sphere, which was a really good fight. Both men hurt each other. Both men did the damage. And Joshua Van did a lot more damage and landed the better power shots and hurt him more. That's why he got the victory. And then he fought Cody Durden, where a lot of people, including me, at that point was kind of writing him off like, hey, Cody Durden's wrestling is gonna might be a bit too much for Joshua Van. Cody Durden was a bit, I think, a little bit bigger than Joshua Van, but Joshua Van's takedown defense was subliminal, and he was able to land his shots on the feet, and he landed his shots on the feet and got another decision victory. And after that, he was going to fight Bruno Silva on UFC 313. Bruno Silva pulled out, and he fought Ray Tesoro on 313, where again he showed really great takedown defense. While Ray Tesoro is early on in his career, very green, has a lot to learn. So does Josh Van, and Josh Van's takedown defense looked really good against a guy whose main attribute is getting to the ground and holding you there. So we got another decision victory. And after that, we cut to UFC 316, the fight me and Jake were at, the card that me and Jake were at, where he TKO'd Bruno Silva in the third round. And my God, that was amazing to see. That was amazing to see him because he showed a different level in that fight. He showed a lot more speed than Bruno Silva. He landed a lot more shots than Bruno Silva, and Bruno Silva just could not withstand the amount of output that Joshua Van was putting on him. Joshua Van's output reminds me a little bit about to reminds me a little bit to Max Holloway's output. It's not the same, but I see some similarities in their output. And so he got the TKO victory there, and then stepping up on short notice 3 weeks later at UFC 317, he fights Brandon Royval, the #1 contender, and in arguably right now the fight of the year or a fight of the year contender. Got a decision victory over Brandon Royval where he was battering Brandon Royval, but Brandon Royval was battering him too. Each man was landing their good shots, but Joshua Van was able to land the more damaging shots. You saw it on the face. Um, and Joshua Van also had a broken toe going into that fight. So Joshua Van has been on a streak, and not all 5 of those fights are in the span of less than a year. All right. So his activity is what I like to see at his age. And it has worked out for him because now he is the #1 contender and he's going to be facing Alexandre Pantoja. And they faced off right after Alexandre submitted Kai Kara. And Joshua Van at the press conference, the pre-fight press conference said, whoever wins the title fight has got to see me. He's got to come see me. Boy, was he right. And we're going to see that fight, right? Joshua Van versus Alexandre Pantoja. And what I think about this fight is I want to, my heart wants me to pick Josh Van um, because his rise up to the top has been great. But you're coming against a guy like Alessandro, against a guy in Alessandro Pantoja who has never been finished and is probably no, he is in the top 5 pound for pound, arguably one of the best um, right now. So it's a hard logic right now says Alessandro Pantoja wins this fight. He can get it to the ground and take Joshua out of his element in the striking and just make him uncomfortable on the ground. But we never seen Joshua up against a high caliber, type of grappler like Pantoja. He's fought some grapplers before, but nothing like Pantoja. So we're gonna really see how good his takedown defense is. I think Joshua Van's takedown defense is going to hold up. I think even if he gets taken down, he's going to be able to scramble enough to get up right back to his feet. And I think he's very similar to these new age type of fighters where they can do everything well, right? Because he said he's been training for 5 years and he's already in this position, number one contender for the flyweight title. 5 years of training, 23 years old. That's wild, dude. That is wild. So I think he's similar to he reminds me similar to like Ilya and Jack Della and all these new guys who can scramble and get back to their feet, and their boxing is just no. I think he's like right now top six best boxers in the UFC right now, and his counter striking in the Royval fight looked really good, and against a guy like Pantoja who's going to consistently move forward, those counter shots are going to be open and available constantly. But Joshua Van's gonna have to, keep that takedown defense, up to par, keep it ready, because Controller's gonna be shooting and getting clinching and trying to get you to the ground every chance he gets, because he wants to get you out of there as soon as he can and get the finish, because that's what he does. And I think Jake has, I don't know if he's mentioned it in his videos, but he likes to call me Mr. Prophecy because I come up with these ridiculous MMA prophecies where um, I predict something to happen, and majority of the time, I'm fucking wrong. I eat my words so bad, but there's a slight sliver where I'm correct, and I always rub it in Jake's face. And right after 317, I was a bit high, right? So I was thinking UFC based, and I was like, prophecy. I mentioned Joshua Van's output reminds me similar to Max Holloway, and you have a dominant Brazilian champion right now who is looks to be unbeatable, unfinishable, and by God is damn near the best in the world. And that reminded me about like, Max Holloway, Jose Aldo? Is this going to look similar to a Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, where Joshua Van takes out Pantoja? And I thought about that. I'm like, I can see that happening. That can happen. But my one concern with Joshua Van is his cardio. Can his cardio match up with Alexandre Pantoja? Because in that Royval fight, in the third round or in the second round, it did look like he was, kind of gassing a bit. It was a high output type fight, high pace fight. So the output looked like it was kind of getting to him, kind of wilting him, but he kind of got a second win in the third round, got the victory. But can he do that for 5 rounds? Can he do that against a guy like Alessandro Pantoja? Because the takedowns and the takedown defense and the wrestling is going to tire Joshua Van like he hasn't experienced before. And that's not going to stop for the majority of all 5 rounds. So can Joshua Van, keep up with that pace and pressure of Pantoja? Um, I do think Joshua Van's fight IQ is pretty underrated because in that fight with Brandon Royval, he did have the broken toe, and he did, he couldn't throw the long kicks, so he threw those stepping kicks on like the oblique kicks onto Royval that had some effect and really hurt Royval and played a factor. He kind of reminds me of a young Tang. Call me crazy, but a young Tang where he collects his data for a little bit and then he can switch on. And he's been known. He's been shit, not shit on. What's the word? Been given grief for not being a finisher, kind of being called a pillow-fisted fighter for just an output heavy fighter. But I think even at his age, 23 years old, I think he just hasn't found that power yet. I think he's going to grow into that power because he's still young, he's still learning, and we still have lots to see from him. So, and in this fight, I do think no matter what happens, whether he wins or loses, Josh Van is going to have some success in this fight. And I think he's gonna fucking lay a beating on Pantoja. It's just whether or not can he keep up with the pace and pressure of Pantoja and last 5 rounds. Because as we've seen many, many times, Pantoja's got a chin. He's gonna eat any shot you hit him with, and he's just gonna keep moving forward. It's just can Josh Van handle that? That's my prediction in this fight. So I'm honestly, if there's gonna be one massive upset this year, no. There's gonna be two massive upsets this year. Now I'm thinking about it. I'll talk about the second massive upset in another video. But I think Joshua Van can pull off a massive upset in this year, and I think he can beat Pantoja. I'm going to predict right now, Joshua Van beats Pantoja. Call me crazy. I think his output, his counter striking, and his boxing and his takedown defense is gonna, work to his favor. And I think at his age, I think maybe Pantoja finally starts to look his age. Maybe. So honestly, I will pick Joshua Van to win this fight. Call me delusional all you want. I don't care. I've been called that before. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking for this fight. This is a very exciting fight that I'm looking forward to. Um, because flyweight right now is starting to heat up. And I think flyweight right now is Coming Prophecy is at that point where featherweight was, where Max Holloway was on the rise. So I think this whether Josh wins or loses, he will remain that top guy in the division, and I think he has a lot of success against a lot of these guys. And it doesn't honestly, if he loses this fight, a fight against Brandon Moreno would be money. The boxing between those two guys, would be oh, cream of the crop. And if Pantoja were to win, I would just if Pantoja were to win, it would just solidify him again as one of the best. And honestly, if he wins, there's not really a clear cut number one contender anymore. So fuck it, you give him Marab, give him Marab after Marab if Marab beats Corey. Fuck, I want to say three massive upsets now that I think about it. Fuck, sorry guys, I'm just talking to myself. Ah, but yeah, uh, I'm gonna pick Josh Van. Win the fight. But thank you all for watching. Like the video, leave a comment, share the video. Anything is appreciated. Hate on me, show some love, anything. I'll take it. But thank you all for watching. And remember, all greatest fighters leave it all the final round. Peace.